Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a Year 13 student from Hamilton. 5 years before I was born, my dad was diagnosed with a brain tumour. This affected his speech, his walk, and lots of his day-to-day tasks. When I was 1, he was clinically dying. He was under hospice, but he didn't die. And then again, when I was 4, he was clinically dying again under hospice, and he didn't die. Then when I was 9, unfortunately he passed away, but that was 9 years later. So I got 9 years with my dad. He had difficulties walking, talking, doing many basic day-to-day things. Under the act that we're voting on, my dad would have been eligible for euthanasia or assisted suicide. Whether or not you think there is a place for this, I have serious concerns with how unsafe this act is for people like my father. In this act, people who request euthanasia don't have to tell any family or friends or counsellors or anyone of their decision. For me, this is really scary because if my dad had chosen euthanasia, then he didn't have to tell my mum or me, and I could have been left wondering why he did it. Was it my fault? Was I not worth staying for? So those questions probably would have, haunted me for the rest of my life, questioning my worth and my value. And as you start to think about it, it has massive, massive consequences for not only that person, but everyone around them. So as I said before, I'm 18, and this is actually the age that if someone has a terminal illness with less than 6 months, they can request euthanasia. As teenagers, we're told that our brains aren't fully developed until we're 25, which, as much as we hate to admit it, it's true. And we are, at the moment, as Year 13s, thinking about, what uni to go to, or who to date, and all those questions that seem like they're the biggest things in our lives. But if you were diagnosed with a terminal illness and you were 18, euthanasia would be an option for you. And to have that on top of everything else, it's a massive, massive decision to make. It's the biggest one you'll ever make, and it's life or death. So in the Act, it says that you have to be mentally competent to request euthanasia, and mental illness can't be the only reason that you request euthanasia. So if you have depression, you can't request it. However, if you have a terminal illness with less than 6 months to live, and you already had depression, or you get depression because you have a terminal illness, which is quite common, then you can still request euthanasia. So the underlying reason you could ask for it is because you're depressed, which is just, honestly, I have no words, because New Zealand has the highest suicide rates, especially for youth, in the world, and to have no safeguards around that at all is really concerning. And the thing about doctors diagnosing someone and then giving them a prognosis is that they don't actually know how long you have left. My dad was given 6 months about 3 times. It just goes to show that 6 months can turn into 9 years, and that has a massive impact on everyone's life, that person's life and the people around them. So to base a life and death decision on that kind of estimate is quite risky, in my opinion. As a generation, a lot of us stand up for choice. I'd say that's a word that almost sums up what our generation stands for. This has almost been challenged with COVID and the lockdown and everything, where we actually had to sacrifice some of the things that we might have wanted for the sake of other people, especially the vulnerable people in our society. So when we're considering this act, we need to think about those vulnerable people again. It's all nice to say, oh, but, you know, it's a choice and my family members might want that choice, but a choice for some people is actually a pressure for others. I often use the metaphor, if there was a chocolate bar right next to you and someone said you can take it or not, it's up to you, then you probably would. But if it was, you know, all the way at the shop, really far away, you're a lot less likely to take it. You know, there is pressure when something's right there and it's available. And it's the same with euthanasia. If you're eligible and it's an option for you, then there's going to be a lot of people who never would have considered euthanasia before, but just the fact that it's there now, they almost feel like they might have to take it sometimes. So that really scares me because it also almost questions the value of that person's life. If you're like me and you're a first-time voter, or any voter for that matter, I really challenge you to get informed and get educated on this really important issue, because the decision that you make and the decision that we make as a country will impact the future generations of New Zealand.